Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to Northeastern and all the house crew that I've met, Maggie and Katrina and Brian. Thanks to my professors that helped me with my studies and getting this recital prepared. I want to thank Dr. Trozian, Professor Laughlin, and Professor Kolakowski. I also want to thank all of you for coming, my friends and family. I've had, a rough time lately, and I wouldn't have been able to get through this without a lot of you. My name is Gabe McCarthy, for those that don't know you. This is my graduate recital to fulfill the last of my requirements for my master's degree in guitar pedagogy. For those of you that don't know what pedagogy means, pedagogy is the practice of we're practicing teaching, basically. We spend a lot of time looking at different method books, practicing them, looking at different studies, or we also call them etudes, and exercises to try to help people play guitar. Guitar is kind of hard sometimes. It shouldn't be. So we want to make sure people are being safe and their technique is good, and so that's why we study the best way to do that. I'm going to be presenting on a set of 10 studies today composed by someone named Leo Brower. The 10 studies I'm going to break up into 5, so I'm going to talk about the first 5 and kind of walk you through, get you through this program with me, and then I'm going to play those 5, and then I'll talk about 6 through 10 and play those. Hopefully you'll have learned something and you'll know, like, oh, this is, some new terms, this is something I didn't know about how to play guitar. So first thing I'll do is introduce you to Leo Brower. So Leo Brower, he's a well-performed and beloved artist in the repertoire of guitar. His compositions realize pedagogical, performance, and innovative objectives for us performers. He achieved writing pieces for guitar players of all skill levels, so you don't have to look to him only for complicated stuff. He's also satisfied a personal goal of his of creating compositions to fill a void he observed in classical guitar literature. So today we're going to explore the pedagogical use of the techniques in his Estudios Sencillos, the first 10. I'm going to give you just an overview of them, a little bit of analysis, how you can adapt them, and then what's helped me with learning some of the pieces that you're going to hear today. The last 2 are kind of much longer than Prelude's, just like a welcome, like thank you for coming, and the last 2 are going to be a bit longer. So we don't learn that all in one go. We break it up, and we definitely use etudes to help us get there. Brower's etudes are designed to be accessible and efficient for developing a guitarist technique. Each one focuses on a specific technique, and they are pretty short, so you can digest it really nice. It's very manageable. I think that's part of the genius of them. They're interesting enough and challenging enough that once you play through, you want to do it again. And I think that starts building a really good muscle for when you want to tackle a larger piece, like, this is what I can digest. This is how much that I want to work through. These etudes liberate guitarists to successfully apply these techniques to larger pieces. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about these first 10 and a little bit of a biography about Leo Brower as well. So he was born in Havana, Cuba in 1939. As a child, he was playing guitar with his father as his teacher. He was learning pieces by Villalobos. Some of these pieces he was learning by ear, so he's really talented right away. For those of you that were here hearing me warm up, one of the warm-ups I was using was a Villalobos study, and can hear that texture is really dense, so it's really amazing he was already picking those things up by ear. Eventually, Leo Brower wanted to learn flamenco guitar. He did study with several people, including Pujol. During this time, he learned about other periods like the Renaissance and Baroque. And this is where he started seeing other instruments had chamber music and sonatas that the guitar didn't have as large of a volume. of, so he sought out to fill that with his compositions. By the 1970s, Brouwer had already reached an international fame. His compositions were finding a greater significance in the classical guitar repertoire, and he was also part of an ideological movement for avant-garde artists that was forming in the 60s and the 70s. His main 3 periods of compositional style, the first is Cuban folk music, second avant-garde, and then the third he was focusing on Caribbean music and music from other parts of the world. He was very interested in art music traditions from beyond his national boundaries, so he was interested in things how like we all have folk music and kind of thinking about that as like a universal form that he worked with. So these first 10, they were written in 2 volumes of 5 in 1972. He wrote another 10 in 1985, and then the last was written in 2002, published in 2002. We're just looking at the first 10. Like I was saying, they're concise, accessible, and they do progressively get a little bit harder. The thing about them being accessible too, I wanted to mention is that I meet musicians all the time, and people that don't know classical guitar music still know Brouwer, and when I go on the internet, I've also seen these etudes written out in tablature, so people are using them even if they don't know how to sight read. Tablature is kind of like a drawing of the guitar, the 6 strings, and there's numbers for the frets, so I thought that was really amazing. Okay, so I'm going to go through these first 5. I'm going to demonstrate a little bit so you know what you're looking for when you hear me play them. So the first etude is a study of melody and accompaniment. Most of us know something that uses melody and accompaniment that we've listened to. It's when a distinct leading voice is supported by rhythm and harmonies. So, you know, there's a higher pitched voice being supported by these lower voices. In this etude, what's interesting is that the melody and the leading voice is actually in the bass. So and the accompaniment is in the fingers. That's kind of unique. We don't always have that. A lot of times the melody, you know, is what we're playing on the treble strings with our fingers. So this is a really great study for getting some practice with your thumb, doing free stroke and rest stroke with it. So rest stroke playing into a string, free stroke clearing the string. It's composed in 3 minor modes: Aeolian, Dorian, and Phrygian. A mode is just a variation on a scale. So most of us know, you know, a minor scale, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, te, do. Aeolian, that's our normal minor. Dorian, we're going to have the 6th lowered, and Phrygian, we're going to have the 2nd lowered. We're going to use a technique in this one that's called stacked fingers. So my fingers are kind of lined up. I'm treating them kind of like a unit when I play this to kind of act like they're one finger, and that really makes a nice clear sound for those accompaniment voices. While this is a study that focuses on the right hand a bit, you do get to do some finger independence with your left hand, and there is a part in it which I do try to get students to do for power chords. Power chords are a really difficult stretch when you first start learning the guitar, and another thing that's really great about this is you're playing the notes separated and you're playing these open strings in between to make sure that you're starting to learn like the accuracy of these fingers and really just develop that stretch. I feel really bad when I see students that start out trying to do power chords and they're like, I can't do it. And so this helps a lot. It's also great for pressure in the left hand because we're playing those open strings in between and you're releasing. You're not going to be building up a lot of tension in your left hand. So that's our first study. The second study that we're going to look at is in descant voices. So there's 4 chordal voices moving through intervals containing various degrees of dissonances and consonances. So a consonance is like a nice balanced chord, what we're used to, right? Nice and balanced. Dissonance is when there's like a clash, it sounds unstable. It's nice to use this etude to kind of open up people's ears to that. There's not a lot of that in a lot of studies. They're kind of, pretty straight. So it's also a great study in counting and sustaining notes. Something that is really standard in guitar playing is, in order to connect notes, we have to kind of hold fingers down to make sure that they're kind of layering over each other. So it's a great piece for sustaining notes, keeping things connected, and finger independence as well for also starting to do chords. Awesome. So study number 3, this is a study focused on tremolo. For those that don't know, tremolo is a rapid repeating of notes to make kind of like a wavery sound, but it's also a sustaining effect. So, our notes on the guitar tend to, they die pretty quickly. So this technique helps us to sustain these notes. Something that can be valuable for players, and what was really valuable for me with this study, is that the tremolo happens with the thumb and the fingers taking different spacing in the right hand. In the piece Asturias that I'll play later, I had a discovery that I was really only used to playing tremolo with just 2 strings adjacent to each other. So the thumb playing, the second string, and then my middle and index playing the first string. And that isn't every piece. So you have to be able to have some spacing between your thumb and the tremolo, and this helped me develop that stretch in my right hand, because you start to kind of open up as you play this third etude. Things that you can do to practice this that were also helpful for me, there's something we do that's called planting, where you're going to put your fingers on the strings before you play. So playing the thumb and middle finger together, and then letting the index play afterwards. That really helps develop that tremolo as well. You can play this piece also something I did, you can tailor it to pieces that you're learning. So I don't know if this would be helpful for everyone, but I had to do a lot of tremolo on my second string, so I actually did try to play this etude with all of my index middle on the second string to kind of help that develop as my thumb goes down to the bass strings. Yeah, I don't know, that might not be helpful for everyone, but just an example of how you can tailor things to meet your needs as you're learning other things. Etude number 4, we count this one in 5. Some 5s are 3 and 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Some are going to be 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There's something in this piece called a hinge bar. So I'm not sure if you all have seen a capo before. A capo holds down multiple strings at the same time. Sometimes we do this in our playing. It's called a bar chord. So if I need the 3rd fret on every string, and I'm gonna have my other fingers doing other notes underneath it, I'm gonna be using one finger to do all of that. I don't have 6 fingers, so I'm gonna use one to do that. A hinge bar is when we have the same fret, but it's only on a few strings, it's not a full bar. So in this etude, I have a hinge bar on my first 2 strings. And then my fingers have to be independent. This has to be kind of glued down, stapled down. A lot of times I tell my students, you want to just plaster this there and leave it, and then this is going to be a totally different feeling from your hinge bar. And the same with bars. We want our bar chord to be kind of independent, resting, not causing any problems while we have other activity going on. So this etude is really great for introducing that. I also like how after he has you do that, you get to release it, so you're not building up tension. Bars are infamous for kind of hurting our left hands because we're pressing too hard. We care so much about the sound and we're not thinking about our placement so much. So this etude is great. I've given that out to students as well. It's also, again, can be adapted. You can change your right hand to do arpeggios where you break the chords up right now. You could also do block chords, especially if students are having trouble kind of exchanging. Block chords are good for that, for sure. All right, so I'm gonna talk about number 5 now, and then I'm just gonna play those, and hopefully you'll be like, I hear what she was talking about. So Etude 5 is a study in right hand arpeggios, what I just kind of mentioned. So we're breaking the chords up. Now, what's interesting about this, and I don't know if some of you saw me warming up, this one, you have to keep this note down, which is kind of hard to do. So this is a really great study for developing that kind of sustain where our bass note needs to keep going while we're changing the higher notes above it. So really great for that, really great for arpeggios in the right hand. I'm gonna go ahead and play these first 5 and then talk a little bit about 6 through 10. Some of these terms will be a little bit more familiar now, so I'll do a little less explaining of terms for that. So here's etudes 1 through 5. 6 through 10. 6 is one of my favorites. It's an etude that is study for your right hand, and it's a descending 4-finger arpeggio. So a lot of things that we play are ascending, or that last one I did, right? Going forward, always a little bit easier than going backwards. This is kind of unique to have something written. You can tailor things to go backwards, but it's really nice to have one that's already built this way. Now you get a lot of practice with it because you're going to be playing the arpeggio backwards on the top 3 strings, and then you repeat it again on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I don't know if anyone is recognizing it at all, but this is kind of what Randy Rhoads wrote Diary of a Madman with. So, but he put it ascending, right? So going up is a little bit easier. You get to practice the left-hand chords. I would do block chords because they are kind of strange. We have A, Lydian. I would just ignore the arpeggio for learning those at first, and just play them as chords. You could even strum them, kind of take away one hand to focus on the other. Yeah, you can also change the placement of the thumb if you wanted to try to challenge yourself a little bit with thumb exchanging in the right hand. Study number 7. This is a study in hammer-ons and pull-offs in our left hand. For those of you that don't know, I am going to define these real quick. A hammer-on is when we play from a lower note and hammer on with our finger. It kind of like strikes the guitar to get the higher note. It's almost like we're interrupting this note to hear that higher one. I was teaching hammer-ons recently to a student, and her song that she was doing hammer-ons with was in between strumming, so she had to do like, and she was struggling to understand. She's like, how is that hammer-on happening so easily in between the strumming? And I was telling her that it's kind of like tapping your head and rubbing your stomach at the same time, because as this hand is playing, this hand is already getting ready. We have to get some distance and then some speed to achieve a hammer-on. So this is already getting ready as this is strumming through. This etude's really great because it really focuses on that. And he wants us to do it fast, which really does help your hammer-ons. We want to go through quickly to get to get that sound. A pull-off is the opposite. It's when we have a high note and we're kind of doing this little, I tell my students, it's kind of like a Nike swoosh, coming up to grab that, hear that lower note. Now, what's really great about this study is that it has us do hammer-ons and pull-offs on all of the strings. It's much easier to do hammer-ons and pull-offs on the first string because you have all this room to come off in. And as we go down the strings, I want to kind of keep the motion contained a little bit so I'm not hitting anything else, and it's great because it's like it's so concentrated on that. Yeah, I really like this one as well. So the first thing that happens in this one too is it's a free little arpeggio, and you can practice going to a rest stroke after that. So it's great for our right hand as well. All right, etude number 8. This is based on a Bulgarian folk song. The piece is in a 2-part harmony, and then there's an arpeggio that happens. The piece, it starts with the canon. Canon is when one voice starts and then the second voice comes in and imitates it. So in schools, they would have us do this a lot with someone starting row, row, row your boat on this side of the room, and then the second side of the room would start later, and then you have this imitation layer over each other. So you're gonna hear that with this one when we get to that one. Etude number 9, we also work on hammer-on and pull-offs, but this one is a little bit harder, so we are kind of progressing. This one, we have to do hammer-ons while we're holding a note down. So that same thing we were trying with the Etude number 5 to keep a finger down while we did arpeggios over it. Now we have to do hammer-ons over that. And it's with the ring and pinky finger, which are harder fingers to play with. They're connected by a tendon. They want to play together, so it's really working on that independence for those two, for sure. Our last one, Etude number 10. This is some practice in block chords, but then it has this scalar part, which is surprisingly not a lot of studies do scales because we have scales. So it's really nice that this piece is kind of working on that in our left hand. You can change the sequence up too. I was, messing around with going up and down instead of all descending. And yeah, those are all of them. So I hope that's a little helpful as you're listening. I know some of this stuff is like a little alien, but hopefully you'll leave here knowing a little bit more about playing the guitar. So I'm gonna play these last 6 through 10, and then I have 2 larger works. I have Asturias, and then I have Low Allen, and they are a little bit long, so get ready for that. Okay, so 6 through 10. Okay, so I just have two left, but like I said, they're a bit lengthy. This first one I think will make a little more sense, and then the second one makes it sounds a little stranger. But the second one is written about a lake in Ireland, and I think that helps understand it a little bit. You kind of hear like raindrops on water and like creeks like with water rushing and waves. So I hope that helps keeping that in mind for this one. I almost feel like I should be like, are there any questions? But okay, so this is Asturias. Okay, we got one more. Yep. Okay, so this is Low Allen. I like it a lot. I hope you enjoy it. I'll be around afterwards. Thank you again for coming. I know it snowed today, and that was a big bummer because I thought we had a little more fall left. So I appreciate you coming out in the freezing rain, and especially people coming from far. Thank you so much.